We've just finished the fourth Sydney Utilities Forum, and I've got to say it was the best one that I've been to. What did you think about the forum itself, and how did they come to be?
Well, I thought it was excellent. I think seeing all those organisations come together, and just the openness, the sharing, the fact that all of them weren't perfect.
Yeah.
They all had common issues, the same issues, but what was a revelation for one was one which another one I've been working on for quite a while, and I think that was the sweet spot. The fact that you can sit in a room with your peers and openly share in a trusting environment. And it's just got better and better each year.
Yeah, I think that was the thing that struck me, was how common the issues are across fleet, and the solutions for that matter. A lot of people doing some really great work in there. But this year, for me, the layout and the format seemed to be, a step up again from the previous 3 years. Would you agree with that?
Oh, totally. I think the fact that they all came together, and the whole thing was centred around discussion and engagement. So we did the ANCAP crash test the day before, and my goodness, there is nothing like watching a vehicle smash into a wall. Yeah. Even though you know it's coming, your adrenaline, 64 k's an hour, bang.
Yeah.
And then having the engagement with James Goodwin afterwards, so they can really ask the question, understand the science of the car. And I think all that networking beforehand and then the dinner then led us into a fantastic environment where everyone knew everyone and was comfortable sharing.
Yeah. I've got to agree with you. I mean, I've never been to a crash test, as most of us hadn't. And when all of the professionals were up on that gantry and that vehicle hit the bollard or the mass simulator, whatever you want to call it, that collective breath that everybody...
The
bang, yeah, and everybody was, it was quite something. But it was, something that really set it up for the year, wasn't it?
And I like that comment, which one of the partners made just recently around how the silence afterwards, in reality, that's the silence of death if you get a crash.
Yeah,
I thought that was just a powerful
it's pretty profound
description, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, yeah. So where did the Utilities Forum actually come from? What's the genesis of the NRSPP and how did the Utilities Forum fit in?
Well, the NRSPP, it's really just a centre of excellence for collaboration, open sharing of workplace road safety. Because like you said, all the organisations have the same issues. It's the common thing pops up, but a lot of them just don't share. They're so busy in their own little world, they don't think around it. Well, what's everyone else doing around it? And so it really came out from the National Transport Commission around, let's get everyone to share the responsibility. Let's get the workplaces, the organisations, all those. Let's get them all to work together and put it out there. Because really, it's not around a competitive advantage. It's a shared advantage. And that's really where it came from. It's supporting the National Road Safety Strategy. It's focusing on the workplace, and because 2/3 of fatalities involve a vehicle in the workplace.
Absolutely, yeah.
So the only way you're going to do that is by collaboratively working together.
Yeah.
The Utilities Forum, where that really came out, was quite unique because we were doing a project looking at benchmarking, and it was an NRMA ACT Road Safety Trust project. And when we were doing these workshops around the place, we actually had a large number of utility companies came along.
Yeah.
And what was incredible, each one, they sat next to each other and they go, we've never done this. Even though we operate in the same city, in the same sector, we don't sit across from each other and say, this is our problem, this is how... And trying to get them to focus on, this is the measures we want, was hard because I was so busy talking around their problems. And we did that each of them. And then when we came over to Perth, we had Water Corp, Shane Sharples. Same thing, he sat there and he went finished, he goes, Jerome, can you do this nationally?
Yeah.
And I went, all right, that's a good challenge. And I took it up, and next minute I was engaging with David Symes at SA Water, SA Power Networks, I should say. I was dealing with David Symes at SA Power Networks, and it all just came together rather seamlessly. APA Group stepped up straight away, Telstra came on board, we had this great little sync group, and that helped sort of guide Origin Energy, and then they just powered it together.
Absolutely. And I remember that first year, and that was a real eye-opener for me because I'd never seen so many industry... So many organisations in the same industry get together to discuss those issues, and that understanding that they're all the same. So that was in Adelaide. The first was in Adelaide. The following year, the
Telstra
then moved to Melbourne.
Back
to Perth for 2017, and we've just wrapped up in Sydney again at 2018. So
and APA Group, they hosted the current one. Fantastic. They stepped up. We had one of their top leaders come in, and she just painted a magnificent journey. And for those of you who don't know about APA Group, they manage gas pipelines and sort of run a lot of them all throughout the country. So their guys are really, their workforce is hugely exposed. But it comes from the top, they lead from the top, and they've gone right back to basics.
Yeah.
And I guess and the point they made is their journey started 4 years ago with the first forum, and they've built on it each year.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things, just through the sharing and working collaboratively with their other peers.
Yeah, I think that's one of the takeaways, isn't it? That continuity. For instance, in 2017, we covered off, Carmel Harrington came and talked about sleep, the issues of sleep and fatigue. But in 2018, that became part of the pre-dinner, the day before. And again, could perhaps we just sort of cover off a little bit about our speakers on the day as well?
Yeah, and that's the thing, is when you had two, so we had Professor Anne Williamson,
Yeah.
and Dr. Carmel Harrington, and two very different sort of lenses, fatigue and sleep, talking about those, and then the naturalistic driving study that's been taking place up in New South Wales, and they just bounce off each other beautifully around a common sort of problem and different sort of lenses to how to manage it.
Yeah.
And always, I think one of the key things is fatigue, but really, if your workforce isn't well rested beforehand, you're pushing things uphill.
That's quite right. I recall a few days beforehand just listening, I think, to one of the radio stations, and there was Anne being interviewed on the radio, and I, at the time, had no idea that she was the guest speaker for the dinner at the event. So that was an absolute bonus, there's no doubt about it. So that was a great warm-up day for the forum itself. But when we got there the following day, the conversation, the networking was just exceptional.
It was effortless.
It was, wasn't it?
I sit there thinking, geez, how are we going to keep them on target? But that wasn't our goal. Was for them to engage, to discuss, and we had one of the things that came out of it. I think we've got 10 or 15 Q&As which we're looking at developing over the coming sort of year. Lots of topics which is fed into the NRSCP, and I can guarantee that if that's a problem for these organisations, it's a problem for a lot of others. But then there's also the positive side. When you think about Telstra's identified 200 of their best drivers.
Yes, yeah.
And instead of thinking about what's a bad driver look like, the thing that came out was, what are the traits of a great driver? Yeah. And all of a sudden Telstra's going to explore that, and hopefully we can share what they've found.
Yeah, I think that was one of the keys, wasn't it? We talk a lot about issues, but a lot of people shared a lot of solutions, a lot of wins as well. I thought Chris Stew's presentation in the afternoon from Essential Energy on mass and payload was a real insight, and we know that that's been really topical. It seems to be getting more momentum as we go along, but I thought his insight as an operating fleet manager was outstanding. What was your highlight of the day, do you think? What were the biggest takeaways for you?
Just hearing people sit there just going, oh my God, I wish I'd known that earlier. Yeah. Oh geez, or that is such a great point, thank you so much, and then building on it. Chris was a fantastic sort of standout. I think just putting it out there, saying this is the problem, this is how we've done it, how we've worked through it, and all of a sudden all the other peers going, I hadn't even thought of it through that sort of lens.
Yeah.
And there's so many of those moments where you can watch the different sort of partners in the room, and they were all so honest.
Yes.
The fact that we were functioning under Chatham House rules, I think, gave it all the power.
Yeah, quite right.
And that all of them just keep coming back, the whole idea of the safer vehicle.
Yeah.
The argument of how do we get our workforce in the safest vehicle, loaded at the right sort of level, and how do we empower our workers to make informed decisions, such that if we are told we can pull over, and how do we protect them in that sort of sense? Because they're out in an open environment. We don't have those controls. We have to have trust that we've got the right people, and that's what kept coming through. How do we get the right people in the door first, and then build them up?
Yeah, and speaking of the right people, there were a few changes this year. There were two organisations that came from outside the usual utilities group, I guess, in terms of Nestle and Ecolabs. I mean, that was terrific in terms of getting their input and for them being able to observe what's happening in the utility sector. What do you think will happen in 2019? How do you think that's going to expand?
It's going to be rather interesting to see where this sort of goes, because I think getting them in there, they got so much out of it, so did the peers, but they also have a lot of similarities in some of their commercial fleet that they utilise. I have no idea where it's going to go. It's always fascinating to see how things evolve. My job is just a facilitation and let it be directed by the partners and the leadership that pushes it all forward. But I like one thing's come out, so Nestle is going to be doing a case study talking around their whole mobile phone journey. I think the points that Luke really drew on around how they've got buy-in among their workforce is probably one of the sweet spots on the day as well, is to how do you get the hearts and minds of people on board, because just telling them don't do it doesn't work, especially with Aussies.
Quite
Whereas he said this is how he translated it to his workforce and the higher risk group.
Yeah.
So keep an eye out for that case study.
Yeah, and in terms of feedback, participant feedback, I mean, it was positive. I know that, but was there anything in particular that people did want, or that really enjoyed on the day that perhaps they want to continue with?
Well, I think the key thing was discussion.
Yeah,
they really wanted that safe environment where they can discuss, and they even came back and said, you'd always think the lead lag indicators would be something that's essential.
Yeah.
The feedback that came in going is, we don't really care about that. We want to know more around the systems and getting those right sort of systems in place, because if we get that all working well, those things will naturally fix themselves.
Yeah.
And that to me was a real, that's a shift in maturity of those in the room.
Yeah, and a lot of work had been put into the data that had been collected over 4 years, and how precious it was to keep that continuity. So even though perhaps some of the elements, I think one of the takeaways for me was how easy it was to facilitate on the day, and the reason for that was that everybody was so giving in that discussion, and it's built each year. It seems to have got better and better. What are we going to do in 2019 to beat this?
That's actually one of the things I've been really pondering, because I think one of the key things we try and do is keep it small. So it's invitation, they come along, and we've got to keep it. It's never going to grow above sort of 20 organisations. Yeah. That's one of the guiding principles. So first in, best, stress. Beyond that, sort of core groups. I think. And what do we do next? I think actually drawing a little more, seeing some of the safety features of the vehicle. Actually, maybe seeing the loading and walking around, seeing them could be quite useful for them. Yeah. Having a discussion with some of the manufacturers. That. I believe that's one of your ideas you threw out there for me there, Tim.
Well, we might do that, I think. Yeah. But I think there's so much scope and so much opportunity, because we're all going to be dealing with operational matters for years and years to come, and the most important thing there is about keeping people safe. So I don't think we'll ever run out of ideas. No,
and it's the same common threads keep coming through. Yeah. It's like you hear about the fatigue angle, the drugs and alcohol, speed. Yeah. They're all sort of very front in mind, getting the right sort of vehicles with the mass loading, and then obviously the regulation is always sitting up there, and especially when they go over borders. So how that all pieces together, I guess it's going to be interesting to see where we go for next year.
So we've got our work cut out for us. We've got planning to do for 2019. We'd obviously encourage partners and anybody out there that's watching this video or involved in fleet to let us know, what they think's of benefit. So we better get started.
I agree, and it's only as good as what the partners put in. And I'll say, look, partners are throwing a lot in, and it's a low cost way. But look, if every organisation is having the similar approaches to safety, the whole sector benefits. So it's a bit of a no-brainer and actually getting involved.
Yeah, it's been fantastic to do it this year. Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure, Tim.
You're welcome.